Everyone thinks this chapter is closed. Signed papers, separate paths, and a quiet understanding that the story has reached its end. To the outside world, the divorce between Keith Urban and Nicole Kidman feels finally clean, calm, and already fading into memory. But behind the scenes, feelings may still be very much alive, and that's where things start to get complicated. There were no explosive interviews, no emotional confessions posted online, no public accusations or bitter exchanges. Instead, there was silence. And silence, especially in Hollywood, often hides more than it reveals. According to reports, this quiet separation didn't erase emotions, it only pushed them out of public view. Sources suggest that at first, everything seemed manageable. Both moved forward with their schedules. Work continued. Life appeared stable. But once the noise of legal proceedings and constant activity settled, reality began to feel heavier. That's when whispers started spreading that one side of this story might not be as resolved as it appears. Rumors claim Keith Urban has been struggling privately, grappling with what life truly looks like without Nicole by his side. Not just as a wife, but as a constant presence, someone who understood the pressures behind the fame and offered support when the spotlight dimmed. Insiders suggest that realization didn't come immediately. It arrived slowly, settling in during quiet moments when distractions faded. At the same time, Nicole Kidman chose a very different path. She didn't explain herself publicly. She didn't attempt to control the narrative. Instead, she stayed quiet, composed, and focused. To fans, that looked like strength. But to those close to her, it may have been something else entirely, a sign of emotional restraint rather than emotional absence. Friends reportedly believe Nicole has been putting on a brave face, not because she feels nothing, but because she's learned how to carry emotional weight without letting it spill into public view. Love, especially love built over many years, doesn't simply disappear. It lingers, quietly, patiently. Her decision to spend the holidays in Australia with her daughters added another layer of intrigue. On the surface, it seemed like a simple family choice, but fans quickly began speculating. Was it about healing, distance, or setting emotional boundaries? That single decision sparked renewed interest in a story many assumed was already over. Meanwhile, reports suggest Keith has started expressing regret in private conversations. Not dramatic declarations, but subtle acknowledgments that the split may have cost him more than he expected. And that's exactly what has Nicole's inner circle uneasy, because regret has a way of reopening doors. An unresolved love can blur even the strongest boundaries. So the real question isn't whether feelings still exist. It's this: what happens when love lingers, but trust is already broken? Reports claim that Keith Urban is struggling far more than most people expected after the split. Not in a dramatic, headline-grabbing way, but in the quiet, internal way that often hits hardest once everything settles. According to insiders, the emotional impact didn't arrive immediately. At first, life kept moving fast enough to drown out reflection. Sources suggest Keith threw himself into work. Tour dates, studio sessions, professional commitments, all of it acted like a temporary shield. As long as he stayed busy, there was little room to sit with what had actually changed. But distractions don't last forever. And once the pace slowed, reality began to surface. Insiders claim that's when the absence became impossible to ignore. Life without Nicole didn't just mean being alone, it meant losing the one person who had consistently grounded him through years of pressure, fame, and constant expectations. Rumors suggest he underestimated how much of his emotional stability was tied to her presence. Loneliness, according to reports, became a recurring feeling. Not the kind that shows up publicly, but the kind that settles in after long days, when there's no familiar voice, no shared routine, and no quiet reassurance waiting at the end of the night. That's when second thoughts reportedly began creeping in. Exhaustion has also played a major role. Sources say Keith has been physically and mentally drained, balancing non-stop work with legal responsibilities and financial pressure tied to the divorce. What once felt like passion now feels like obligation. And exhaustion has a way of amplifying regret. Social media scrutiny has only added to the weight. Every appearance is analyzed. Every lyric is dissected. Fans search for hidden meaning in his music, his expressions, his silence. Reports suggest Keith is well aware of the constant speculation, and that pressure has made it harder for him to process his emotions privately. According to rumors, Keith has started expressing regret in conversations with people he trusts. Not dramatic declarations, but subtle acknowledgments that the split may have cost him more than he expected. Losing Nicole didn't just change his personal life, it altered his emotional foundation. Insiders say he's been reflecting on what was lost rather than what was gained. The shared history, the support, the sense of stability that's difficult to replace. And once regret takes root, it tends to grow quietly, fueled by hindsight and loneliness. Regret doesn't mean decisions will be reversed, but it does change how the past is viewed and how the future feels. And while Keith's regret is becoming harder to ignore, it may not be the biggest concern right now. While Keith Urban is reportedly struggling with regret, Nicole Kidman has taken an entirely different approach. She hasn't made any public statements, hasn't tried to explain her side, and hasn't engaged in any kind of public drama. From the outside, this silence reads as composure, strength, and grace, the hallmark of someone who has chosen to prioritize herself and her family. But those closest to her insist that beneath the calm exterior lies a complex emotional landscape that she navigates carefully every single day. Friends reportedly claim that Nicole is putting on a brave face. She maintains a carefully balanced public image, focused on work, present for her children, and engaged in her daily life. Yet, insiders suggest this doesn't mean she's untouched by her emotions. On the contrary, they believe she still loves and misses Keith in some way, or at least the version of him tied to decades of shared memories. Love doesn't vanish simply because a marriage ends, and Nicole's feelings may linger quietly, hidden behind layers of self-control. Her recent decision to take her daughters to Australia over the holidays illustrates this delicate balance. On the surface, it may have seemed like a simple family vacation, but insiders suggest it was much more than that, a subtle way to ground herself, reconnect with her roots, and create a space separate from Nashville and the environment tied to memories of her marriage. It was reportedly a way of reclaiming her life, both as a mother and as an individual, without allowing external pressures to dictate her choices. Nicole's inner circle reportedly watches her closely during this period, not out of judgment but out of concern. They know that the combination of past emotional investment and current quiet strength could make her vulnerable to old patterns. Nostalgia has a way of softening even the strongest resolve, and the friends closest to her fear that any emotional gestures or expressions from Keith could blur the line she has carefully established. This tension between outward composure and hidden emotion defines her current state. She is reportedly focusing on stability for her children, her career, and herself. Her professional projects, which include upcoming films and television appearances, provide structure and purpose, allowing her to navigate the emotional turbulence of post-divorce life. Friends claim that these projects are not just work commitments, they are therapeutic anchors, helping her regain independence and self-confidence while moving forward. Insiders also point out that Nicole has been incredibly deliberate in how she handles public attention. She previously feared what the media and fans might think about her choices, yet she has maintained control, demonstrating a level of personal strength that is both admirable and emotionally protective. According to sources, she has learned the importance of boundaries, emotional, social, and professional, and is steadfast in keeping them intact. And yet, despite all this resilience, her friends remain cautious. They reportedly worry that any signs of Keith's regret could challenge her equilibrium, because while she is strong, her compassion and history with him could make her reconsider, even if only for a fleeting moment. This is why insiders emphasize that Nicole is at a delicate crossroads, a place where past love and present independence collide, creating a tension that is as fascinating as it is precarious. And that's exactly what has her inner circle worried, because while she may appear untouchable publicly, the heart remembers in ways the mind sometimes cannot control. As Nicole Kidman navigates the delicate aftermath of her split with Keith Urban, her closest friends reportedly play a pivotal role behind the scenes. According to insiders, they are deeply concerned, not controlling, but protective, about how lingering emotions and Keith's rumored regret could affect her carefully rebuilt life. Friends claim that over the years, Nicole invested tremendous emotional energy into the relationship, often prioritizing Keith's needs above her own. That pattern, they fear, could resurface if nostalgia and compassion overpower the lessons she has learned since the divorce. Sources suggest that her inner circle has been repeatedly urging her to remain grounded, to distinguish between comfort and genuine growth. The tension is real. Shared history and deep emotional bonds can make past feelings resurface, even when they are tied to old pain. Her friends reportedly emphasize that familiarity can feel soothing, but it does not necessarily mean a situation is healthy to re-enter. They are concerned that even a subtle gesture of remorse from Keith could soften the boundaries she has worked so hard to establish. The worry isn't hypothetical. According to insiders, Nicole spent years tying herself into knots to make the relationship work, constantly adjusting, compromising, and sometimes sacrificing her own peace for the sake of maintaining stability with Keith. Friends claim that she is finally at a point where self-preservation and personal growth have become central to her life. They reportedly view any potential reconnection as a risk to that equilibrium, a risk that could undo years of emotional work and carefully structured independence. It is said that this concern is rooted in care, not control. Friends reportedly want Nicole to make her own choices, but they also want her to be fully aware of the stakes. They stress the difference between compassion and vulnerability, pointing out that while old feelings can resurface naturally, they can also cloud judgment. Their hope is that she resists the pull of familiarity and chooses stability over nostalgia, even if it means distancing herself emotionally from Keith's expressions of regret. Adding complexity, sources claim that Keith's remorse has become more visible to those within Nicole's circle, even if it remains unspoken publicly. Every gesture, every subtle interaction, reportedly sparks caution among her friends. They fear the past could tempt Nicole into decisions that might compromise the progress she has made. The emotional landscape, they suggest, is more fragile than it appears on the surface. This intervention highlights a crucial dynamic. It's not about policing Nicole's choices, but about ensuring she does not unintentionally sacrifice her own well-being for the sake of rekindling what once was. According to insiders, the central message from her friends is clear: nostalgia can be dangerous when paired with unresolved emotions. While love may linger, the risk lies in confusing comfort with reconciliation. Meanwhile, as her friends step in with guidance and caution, Keith's world continues to shrink, marked by isolation, pressure, and reflection. The contrast between his backward-looking regret and her forward-moving resilience is stark, and it sets the stage for a story that is far from over. Nicole is reportedly aware of these concerns, but the tension between empathy and self-preservation remains palpable, and that delicate balance between old love, new freedom, and the guidance of those who care most continues to define her post-divorce journey. Life for Keith Urban reportedly looks very different after the divorce, and insiders say it's been a stark adjustment. While fans often see him on stage, performing effortlessly, or posting charming photos online, the reality behind the scenes paints a more isolated and emotionally taxing picture. According to sources, the combination of professional obligations, financial responsibilities, and personal reflection has left him feeling drained and, at times, overwhelmed. It's a reality few outsiders get to see. Financial pressure is said to be one of the ongoing challenges. Legal fees tied to the divorce, combined with daily financial commitments, reportedly weigh heavily on him. While Keith continues to work and perform, insiders suggest that part of his drive stems not just from passion, but from the need to maintain stability in a life that suddenly feels less anchored. Exhaustion, both mental and physical, is reportedly becoming increasingly pronounced. Isolation has become a recurring theme in Keith's post-divorce life. According to sources, the loss of Nicole means more than just the end of a marriage. It means losing his closest emotional supporter. She was, for years, not just a partner but a confidant, someone who understood the pressures of fame, the weight of public scrutiny, and the emotional highs and lows of the music industry. Without her, daily life reportedly feels heavier, lonelier, and more uncertain. Insiders claim that social media scrutiny has amplified these challenges. Every post, every performance, and every public appearance sparks speculation. Fans analyze even minor gestures for hidden meaning, and rumors can spread within hours. According to reports, Keith is aware of this intense scrutiny and finds it difficult to manage alongside personal feelings of regret and reflection. Emotionally, sources suggest he is struggling to find a sense of equilibrium. Loneliness, combined with fatigue and the constant need to stay busy, reportedly creates an environment where self-reflection is unavoidable. Friends who have spoken with him claim he sometimes expresses second thoughts, quietly acknowledging that the absence of Nicole has affected him more deeply than he initially realized. The regret, while understated publicly, reportedly lingers persistently in private moments. Keith's professional life adds another layer of complexity. While performing and touring provide him with structure and purpose, insiders say that the relentless pace can also prevent him from fully processing his emotions. Work becomes both a refuge and a distraction, allowing him to avoid moments of stillness where regret and longing might feel overwhelming. Even as he deals with these personal challenges, Keith reportedly remains conscious of how he is perceived. His image, carefully curated over decades, contrasts with the private reality of emotional strain. According to sources, this tension between public poise and private vulnerability is a defining aspect of his current state. It is a world shrinking under pressure, with regrets that aren't easily voiced and emotions that aren't easily released. And yet, while Keith reflects on what he has lost and navigates this challenging post-divorce reality, Nicole is taking an entirely different path. Her forward-looking focus on family, career, and personal growth contrasts sharply with his introspective struggle, highlighting a divergence in how the two are coping with life after their separation. While Keith Urban reportedly navigates isolation, regret, and the lingering weight of their split, Nicole Kidman appears to have taken a remarkably different approach. According to insiders, she is deliberately focusing on stability, personal growth, and her own priorities, a sharp contrast to the reflective struggle her ex-husband is reportedly experiencing. Nicole's path, they claim, is less about looking back and more about reclaiming control over her life. Sources suggest that Nicole has anchored herself around two major pillars: her family and her career. For years, she devoted much of her emotional energy to her marriage, often prioritizing Keith's needs above her own. Now, friends report, she is taking deliberate steps to ensure her own happiness and autonomy remain front and center. Her daughters are a primary focus, and her presence in their lives is reportedly intentional, nurturing, and consistent, a grounding force in what could otherwise be an emotionally tumultuous period. Professional pursuits have become a second anchor. Insiders reveal that Nicole has several upcoming films and television projects lined up, which not only keep her busy but also provide a sense of purpose and personal achievement. Work, according to sources, has become therapeutic. It allows her to channel energy into creation, performance, and public engagement without letting the emotional turbulence of the divorce dominate her daily life. The structure provided by these commitments reportedly strengthens her resilience and independence. Public perception, once a source of concern, is now reportedly something Nicole navigates with confidence. Initially, insiders say, she feared judgment from fans and media over how she handled her divorce. But as she has moved forward, she has maintained composure, choosing to manage the narrative indirectly through her professional choices and public appearances rather than commentary or social media posts. Friends claim that this measured approach reflects emotional maturity and a commitment to safeguarding her peace, even as she demonstrates outward strength. Insiders emphasize that Nicole's progress is not the result of suppression or avoidance. Rather, it comes from intentional decision-making, self-awareness, and a clear understanding of what she wants in the next chapter of her life. According to reports, she has worked hard to recognize old patterns and ensure that nostalgia, empathy, or residual feelings do not compromise the boundaries she has set for herself. Her inner circle reportedly supports this approach, offering guidance without imposing restrictions, and helping her stay mindful of her own emotional well-being. Sources also point out that Nicole's forward-focused energy contrasts sharply with the private regret reportedly felt by Keith. While he is reflecting on what has been lost, she is actively shaping what is to come. Friends claim that this is not about ignoring past feelings, but rather about prioritizing growth over sentimentality, and independence over uncertainty. This careful balance of compassion, self-awareness, and strategic decision-making, insiders suggest, positions Nicole to move forward on her own terms. She is reportedly embracing autonomy, focusing on her children, investing in her career, and reclaiming emotional control. In doing so, she highlights a critical distinction between surviving a separation and thriving after it, a difference that may ultimately define the next chapter of her life. And yet, even with this strength and clarity, questions linger. How long can this forward momentum remain untouched if expressions of regret continue to surface from the past? This tension sets the stage for a critical emotional crossroads that will test both heart and resolve. At the heart of the Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban story lies an emotional crossroads, one that insiders say is fraught with tension, reflection, and the lingering question of what could happen next. While the public sees two former spouses moving forward in seemingly opposite directions, Keith in quiet regret, Nicole in deliberate progress, the private reality is far more complex, filled with unspoken feelings, unresolved emotions, and the subtle pull of familiarity. Of friends reportedly believe that Nicole is navigating a delicate balance. On one hand, she has built a life defined by independence, stability, and clarity, focusing on her children and her career. On the other hand, insiders suggest that residual affection for Keith remains, not necessarily a desire to reconcile, but a recognition of shared history, deep emotional bonds, and years of intimacy that cannot be erased. Love, after all, doesn't disappear overnight. Even after a marriage ends, this crossroads is made more complicated by Keith's rumored expressions of regret. Sources claim he has privately acknowledged that losing Nicole has left a void in his life, a space that no professional success or public recognition can fill. While he reportedly shows no public desperation, insiders suggest that even subtle gestures, messages, or confessions could stir emotions that Nicole has worked hard to manage. Friends reportedly worry that nostalgia or compassion might tempt her to reconsider, even if just momentarily, the boundaries she has carefully established. At the same time, the stakes are high. Reopening the door to a past relationship carries inherent risks, according to sources. Nicole's friends reportedly remind her that the emotional dynamics that existed before are not easily corrected. Returning to Keith, even with the best intentions, could risk reopening old wounds, reigniting patterns of compromise, and disrupting the personal growth she has painstakingly achieved. The crossroads is therefore not just about love, it is about weighing lessons learned, emotional resilience, and the wisdom gained from past experiences. Fans, of course, continue to speculate. Social media buzz has framed the situation as a potential romantic second chance, with countless discussions about whether regret will lead to reunion. But insiders caution that speculation rarely captures the nuanced reality of private relationships, where feelings are layered, decisions are deliberate, and outcomes remain uncertain. Nicole's position, according to friends, is one of conscious evaluation, carefully considering her next steps without being swayed by public opinion or emotional impulse. The emotional crossroads is also defined by timing. Nicole is reportedly aware that any engagement with Keith, however fleeting, could alter the trajectory of her personal life. She must navigate a narrow path, balancing empathy with prudence, acknowledging past love while maintaining present clarity, and responding to regret without allowing it to dictate her future. This tension, sources say, is ongoing and deeply personal, representing a pivotal moment in her post-divorce journey. Ultimately, the crossroads represents a choice, a decision that could shape not only the immediate future but the emotional trajectory of both their lives. It is a place where heart meets reason, nostalgia meets self-preservation, and love meets accountability. According to insiders, how Nicole chooses to respond, whether by maintaining her forward momentum or reconsidering old ties, may define the next chapter of her story, highlighting the delicate interplay between past attachments and present priorities. And as this moment unfolds quietly behind closed doors, one truth becomes increasingly clear: the decisions made here will not only reflect who they are today, but who they choose to become tomorrow. Through all the speculation, emotion, and behind-the-scenes turmoil, the story of Nicole Kidman and Keith Urban reaches a critical juncture, a choice that could define the next chapter of both their lives. Sources suggest that the divorce, though finalized, has left lingering emotional currents that neither party can fully ignore. Keith, reportedly filled with regret, is reflecting on what was lost. Nicole, meanwhile, has been building a life rooted in independence, family, and personal growth. The intersection of these paths, insiders say, is where the real story lies: quiet, complex, and deeply human. Regret, according to sources close to Keith, is not dramatic or performative. It is subtle, persistent, and private. Friends claim he recognizes the depth of what he gave up and feels the absence of someone who was more than a spouse, a confidant, supporter, and partner in every sense. Insiders say he is aware that public attention magnifies the situation, but the private acknowledgement of loss continues to weigh heavily. It is a type of sorrow that doesn't demand attention, yet shapes every decision and every reflection. Nicole, by contrast, is reportedly operating with clear intention. Sources suggest she is not denying past feelings, but she is choosing how to let them influence her present. Family commitments, career ambitions, and personal well-being anchor her choices, helping her navigate a path that is deliberate rather than reactive. Her friends claim that she has learned the hard lessons of the past, understanding that nostalgia and affection can blur judgment if not tempered by awareness and self-respect. The guidance she receives is about preserving that clarity, ensuring that any decisions made are in alignment with her growth and priorities. The emotional stakes are significant. Returning to the past, insiders say, could reignite old patterns, reopening vulnerabilities and challenges she has worked years to overcome. At the same time, completely closing the door requires confronting feelings that may not fade quickly: the affection, familiarity, and memories that have shaped their shared history. Sources emphasize that this crossroads is not simply about reconciliation or finality. It is about balancing emotion, wisdom, and foresight in a situation where every choice carries weight. Fans and observers naturally speculate about a potential reunion, interpreting public gestures, social media hints, and subtle cues as signs of what might come. Yet insiders caution that such interpretations rarely capture the depth of private dynamics. Emotions are layered, boundaries are carefully managed, and decisions are deliberate. Nicole's position, according to those closest to her, is one of careful evaluation, weighing love against lessons, reflection against forward momentum. Ultimately, the story of Keith and Nicole is a reminder that relationships do not end neatly with legal papers. Emotions linger, regrets emerge, and the heart and mind may follow different paths. According to sources, the decision Nicole makes now, whether to move forward independently, maintain distance, or consider old ties, will profoundly influence not only her own future but also how Keith navigates his post-divorce journey. And perhaps the most striking lesson of all is simply yet profound: sometimes the hardest part of moving on is knowing when not to look back. It requires courage, self-awareness, and a steadfast commitment to personal growth. As insiders observe, Nicole appears prepared to embrace this challenge, walking a path that prioritizes resilience, family, and clarity over sentimentality and nostalgia. The choice she makes will not just close a chapter, it will define the tone and direction of everything that comes next. And as fans watch, wonder, and speculate, one truth remains undeniable: the balance between love, regret, and growth is delicate, and in this story, it is still unfolding quietly, powerfully, and in ways that only time will fully reveal.